ग्रेट गुड मॉर्निंग टू ऑल। मैं सुमित कुमार सिंह आप तमाम यूपीएससी एस्पिरेंट्स या अन्य कोई कम्पिटिटिव एग्जामिनेशन की तैयारी कर रहे विद्यार्थियों का इस मगध पुत्र यूट्यूब चैनल में अभिनंदन करता हूं। माय डियर फ्रेंड्स, आज हम लोग यूपीएससी सिविल सर्विसेज मेंस एग्जामिनेशन 2020 का जो है वो इंग्लिश कंपलसरी पेपर को आज हम लोग कह सकते हैं कि रीड करने जा रहे हैं। हम पूर्व ही बता देना उचित समझता हूं कि ना हम इस प्रश्न पत्र का कोई विश्लेषण करेंगे, ना ही इसका कोई इवैल्यूएशन या इलाबोरेशन करेंगे। आपको समक्ष ज्यों का त्यों मैं प्रश्न पत्र को रीड करने जा रहा हूं। इसके बाद आप स्वयं जो है इसका मूल्यांकन करें, इवैल्यूएशन करें कि यूपीएससी सिविल सर्विसेज मेंस जो कंपलसरी जो है इंग्लिश है, जिसमें कि मात्र 33% जो मार्क्स लाना होता है, यह एक क्वालिफाइंग पेपर है। इसमें बस क्वालिफाई करना होता है, लेकिन क्वालिफाई करना नेसेसरी है और यह पेपर कंपलसरी भी है। अगर आप इसमें क्वालिफाई नहीं करते हैं तो आपका अन्य सारा पेपर चेक ही नहीं होगा। भले ही इसका मार्क्स जो है मेरिट लिस्ट में नहीं जुटे, लेकिन यह पेपर आपको मतलब कह सकते हैं देना आवश्यक है और इसमें पास करना भी आवश्यक है। तो कह सकते हैं कि इंग्लिश कंपलसरी पेपर, आइए हम इसे रीड करते हैं। रीड करने के बाद स्वतः इसका मूल्यांकन आप करिए कि किस प्रकार का प्रश्न पूछे जाते हैं, क्वेश्चंस पेपर पूछने के पैटर्न क्या है, और हम किस प्रकार आसानी से जो है 33% जो है 33% मार्क्स जो है लाएं और इस पेपर में क्वालिफाई करें। सो लेट्स स्टार्ट। टाइम अलॉट 3 घंटे, मैक्सिमम मार्क्स 300। क्वेश्चन पेपर स्पेसिफिक इंस्ट्रक्शंस, कुछ इंस्ट्रक्शंस दिए गए हैं, निर्देश अनुदेश कह सकते हैं, उसको पढ़ते हैं। Please read each of the following instructions carefully before attempting questions. All questions are to be attempted. The number of marks carried by a question part is indicated against it. Answers must be written in English only. Word limit in questions wherever specified should be adhered to, and if answered in much longer or shorter than the prescribed length, marks will be deducted. Any page or portion of the page left blank in the question cum answer booklet must be clearly struck off. Now, question number 1. Write an essay in about 600 words on any one of the following topics. 100 marks. A. Indian judicial system needs overhauling. B. Not rural or urban, India needs urban growth. C. Relevance of Hindi as a national language. D. COVID-19 pandemic and the Indian economy. So these are the 4 questions in the form of essay. You have to write one in 600 words only. Now question number 2. Read the passage given below carefully and write your answers to the questions that follow in clear, correct and concise language. 15 into 5, 75 marks. 15, number 1 question. 5 question carry 75 marks. When Tolstoy lead a party composed of his family and visited to harvest a field for a widow, he was doing 2 things. In part, he was saying that everyone ought to do his share of what is called the bread labor and earn his keep by the sweat of his brow. At the same time, he was affirming that each of us should help our less fortunate neighbors. Mahatma Gandhi agreed wholeheartedly with both these principles, but he linked them more closely than Tolstoy with what he saw as the dissidence of industrial life that takes people away from the home and village crafts, which are varied and rewarding to the soul, destroying monotony of machines. Even before either of these great men had given their philosophy to the world, an American author named Vedio has built himself a hut in the wood to prove that he could support himself by the simplest manual work. And in Britain, Ruskin had lead his student out from Oxford to build a raised footpath across the water meadows to a village to demonstrate the dignity of labor. The path remains to these days, almost 150 years later, lined with the tall poplars as a memorial to a fine ideal. One could trace the history of such ideas still further back to this writing of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who preached the dignity and equality of man and the educational value of nature and manual work. From the Swiss city of Geneva in the 18th century, it was, however, a Swiss called Ferry Carisoles, a contemporary of Gandhiji, who took these basic principles and used them to promote international reconciliation. The Perry was no ordinary Swiss, for it is rare for ordinary people to the courage to dream dreams and attempt to put them into practice. Perry's father family originated in Italy. His mother family come from France. He had a German grandmother and had relations in England. He used to point out the stupidity of frontiers. Perry described how at the age of 17 he was walking in the woods and experienced something which seemed to be like a solemn dedication to truth, in which the first necessity was to recognize one's own faults. In the winding fashion there come to me in the vision of truth amid nature, mysteries and solitude. He had the habit of keeping a pencil and a notebook with him for entering his straight out, and from these notebooks, of which there are more than hundreds, it is seen that fretted over the many failures of the Western way of life, and yet was generous about the people he met. Despite being an engineer, Perry, in order to work his way, took a job on a poultry farm and later in an oil field. While he was in Honolulu, Hawaii, he earned his living by teaching French, but these resulted in his being paid more than he needed for his skip. He gave all his saving away to charity. From Hawaii he moved to Japan, experiencing there an entirely new way of life, which helped him to see more clearly the virtues and follies of European culture. Returning home at the outbreak of the war in 1914, he gave all the money inherited from his father to the state, saying, "I believe that the teaching of the Christ are superior to good business sense." Later he wrote, 2000 years ago there came a radiant light full of peace and loving kindness, and we immediately crucified it. Perry had been impressed with the sacrifice and heroism in war and wanted something equally positive mobilized in the cause of peace. He organized the first international work camp at a war-devastated village in France. The idea was that people of different nationalities, including those whose countries had recently been enemies of one another, should be joined side by side in honest work to rebuild not only the concrete things but also the feelings of brotherhoods that are shattered by war. The number of volunteers or the numbers of camps began to grow rapidly, and what had been the Swiss Service become the Swiss Civil International's SCI. Perry died in 1945 after World War II. Now the Perry Carisoles had the satisfaction of doing what he believed to be right. Each year a growing number of volunteers go to the work camps, and there is scarcely a country that has not heard of them. Any of become a work champion, and for many this is the place to start planting young trees and crossing the frontiers. Now the question arises from this passage, or this comprehensive passage. Question number A: what were the principles of Tolstoy with which Mahatma Gandhi agreed? B: how are Thoreau's introductions linked to Gandhi and Tolstoy in the passage? C: what was the Perry philosophy of life? And D: what is SCI and how did it come into existence? And E: how is Perry's work different from the work of those mentioned in the passage? Now question number 3: make a precise of the following passage in about 1/3 of its length. Do not give a title to it. The precise should be written in your own language. 75 marks. Ashoka set an extraordinary example by making himself available at all the times for consultation, whether he was relaxing, say, in the place gardens, or even while being massaged. While hearing and settling dispute, he kept in touch with the details of administrations. The dispute over the water rights, grazing rights, and the problem of money lending were all familiar to him. To complete this picture of how the emperor and his people lived, it is an essential to consider the castes which were already forming in India's first great empire. In Asoka's empire, there were the priestly caste who lived as monks or holy men and performed rites at the temple. They regarded themselves as superior to all others, and their influence was so great that it was something a threat to the power of the emperor himself. Next in importance came to the three largest castes: the herdsman, the cultivator, and the craftsman. While the soldiers and officials and the conciliars, who were the least important, were relatively few. Finally, there were slaves and other outside the caste system altogether. Thus, the life of the emperor and his people can be made out of the legends and scraps of writing which have been preserved. It was the extraordinary empire that Asoka crafted the new ideas which grew from his study of Buddha and his followers. Gautam and the Buddha, who had lived nearly 300 years earlier, little is known with the certainty about him as he grew up. But innumerable legends have formed around his life. Some of these common many religious leaders in Asia, such as the capacity for walking on water or multiplying food. Buddhism taught Asoka the importance of the right way to live. According to a legend, taking to a victorious king, Buddha asked, "What would you do if you were told that a landslide was about to destroy you and your city?" The king replied, "I would live righteously. This would be nothing else to do." Gautam further asked, "Old age and death are rolling down upon you. What are you going to do?" The king smiled and answered, "Live righteously." Gautam Buddha taught that the aim of life was to escape from the petty hopes, fears, and hatreds which make people little-minded, and to become scenery and happy while raising above them. Nothing was written down about him or his saying until shortly before Asoka time. But then the tales began to accumulate as they were recounted in Buddhist monasteries where these monks gathered and lived. Gradually, the Buddhist religion separated itself from Hinduism and spread to other countries. The Asoka, to an extent, was responsible for this. He was alert to new religious ideas and must have made and talked to Buddhist followers. However, his convergence was not sudden. Like St. Paul's on the road of Damascus, nor did he had an experience such as the Gautama had, when the right way to live became suddenly clear as he sat meditating one day under the banyan tree. The great event in Asoka region was the Kalinga War. The Kalinga War was to Asoka what the banyan tree was to the Gautam Buddha. Most men, when victorious, become so drunk with the power that they will listen to good advice neither from the statesman nor prophet. But Asoka was applied to add the contradictions between the cruelty he saw and the lessons of Buddhism he had learned. Asoka's greatness can be measured by what he caused to be written on rock after the victory. He got the inscription engraved so that any sons of great-grandsons that he might have would not think of gaining conquest but would live in a peace and contentment. Asoka denounced fame and glory and announced that to him the only glory was following Dhamma. Towards the end of his reign, he kept contact with a large number of Asian countries. But instead of sending only the usual sort of envoy, he sent missionaries to explain the Dhamma in the countries they visited. His influence as a wise ruler was therefore spread far away widely than if he had marched with his victorious army. Later, Buddhism spread to Burma, Thailand, and China, where a standard of humility for great rulers and a belief in serenity, goodness, and a reverence for life were accepted and have still not died out. It is doubtful whether there can ever be a peace between the country unless the first lesson is learned. The power of rulers must be guided by kindness and wisdom. Although Emperor Asoka appeared to be a failure since his subject gave up Buddhism and within the 50 years his empire fell to pieces, he was a man whose influence, like that of the Jesus or Socrates, he was extended by his death. 792 words. Question number 4.8. Rewrite the following sentences after making necessary corrections. Do not make unnecessary change in the original sentence. A. Had you brought some mangoes? Second, the Ganga is the scared river. Third, I and Chetan did all the works. Fourth, he said it himself. 5. Blessed is he that has found a job. 6th, he is much ill to do any work. 7th, one of the boy was absent for a week. 8th, Gopal came home lately. 9th, she was sitting beside him. And 10, our heart is small and our heart are large. Now B, supply the missing words. I am going away blank the end of the January. Second, our flat is blank the second floor of the building. Third, what time did the gate blank the hotel? Fourth, I have no idea what Tom alters. I have never heard about him. Fifth, the problems is getting serious. We have to do something blank it. Now C, use the correct form of the verbs given in the bracket. 1. If you blank a wallet in the street, what would you do with it? You have to fill with the find, found and find. The correct form of words in the blanks. Now second, we are late the film blank by the time we get to the cinema start. Third, what was the wrong with you by blank to the hospital go? Fourth, I am thinking blank a house by. Fifth, she took a bottle from the bag. She blank all the way from the home carry. D, write the antonyms of the following. 1. Boring. 2nd, accept. 3rd, exit. 5th, misanthropic. And 5th, dissent. Now question number 5. Rewrite the following sentences as directed without changing the meaning. First, he said to him, is your name not Ahmed? Change into indirect speech. Second, why did your brother write such a letter? Change into passive voice. Third, no sooner did he enter the house than he took off his coat. Use as soon as. Sixth, Sohan doesn't smoke and he doesn't drink. Use neither nor. Fifth, he must eat or we cannot leave. Change into a simple sentence. And sixth, your sister helped you to do the assignment blank. Add a question tag. Now question number 7. The doctor will see you today only if it is an emergency. Use unless. 8. You can borrow the book if you return it soon. Use provided that. 9. I can't explain the situation. It is too complicated. Use to or to. Now 10. He owed his successes to his father. Change into a complex sentence. Now question B. Use the following words to make sentences that bring out their meaning clearly. Do not change the form of words. No marks will be given for vague and ambiguous sentences. First, altruist. Second, senility. Third, glee. Fourth, ostensible. Fifth, tortuous. And C. Choose the appropriate word as to fill in the blanks. First, there are millions to start blank space and the space. Second, kids' poetry is full of blank, imaginary, sensual or sensuous. Third, leave aside the interest she won't pay even the blank amount, principal or principal. Fourth, research demand blank study of the subject, intense or intensive. Fifth, this is not a list at all, but so the kind of friends that is available, exhaustive and exhausting. Now D. Use the following idioms, phrases and sentence of your own to bring out their meaning clearly. Do not change the form of the words. First, cold comfort. Second, Indian the smoke. Third, feather one's nets. And fourth, incommensurable. Fifth, laugh in one's sleeve. So that's all. तो ये था यूपीएससी सिविल सर्विसेज इंग्लिश कंपलसरी पेपर. इसमें बस आपको क्वालिफाइंग मार्क्स लाने हैं, लेकिन क्वालिफाई करना आवश्यक है, अर्थात इसमें 33% ही मार्क्स लाने हैं, लेकिन इसमें पास होना जरूरी है. तभी आपके अन्य जो पेपर हैं, क्वेश्चंस पेपर का जो आंसर सीट रहेगा वो चेक होगा. तो यह रहा यूपीएस सिविल सर्विसेज 2020 का कंपल्सरी पेपर जो है, अनिवार्य पेपर जो है कह सकते हैं सिविल सेवा परीक्षा 2020 का। आशा करता हूं कि वीडियो अच्छा लगा हो तो इसे सब्सक्राइब करना ना भूलें। सब्सक्राइब करने में आपका कुछ पैसा या मुद्रा का व्यय नहीं होता है, लेकिन हाँ ज्ञान की वृद्धि में, और अगर आपका यह वीडियो मदद करता है या फिर यह चैनल हमारा तनिक भी अगर कह सकते हैं योगदान प्रदान करता है, तो आप भी इसे कह सकते हैं कि सब्सक्राइब कर मुझे अनुग्रहित करें। और कह सकता हूं कि इस यज्ञ, इस ज्ञान के प्रचार के यज्ञ की आहुति में आप भी अपना एक आहुति डालें। थैंक यू, हैव अ ग्रेट डे।